off, Ponce.
I got into some interesting conversations fairly late last night, and remembered an old Aeon Flux episode in which Trevor Goodchild is trying to reform people by implanting them with this artificial conscience called a custodian. And through a long chain of events, I found the music from Aeon Flux had been re-released on a sort of a remastered triple album by the creator. I'll link below so you can go and buy it, and I strongly recommend that you do. Plus, he's a nice chap and a tabletop gamer, and he knew I was. Fantastic. But back to the point. So I got into this conversation with Lexi Gore, who you should be following if you're not. She's got a YouTube channel. I'll link that down below as well. We were just talking about how social justice warriors act and what the difference between social justice and a social justice warrior is. And remembering this episode, it's sort of bubbling up in my head. I said an artificial conscience for those who have none. And lots of people seem to look for things like that, you know, the easy hedges, the ways to feel good about themselves in a way that isn't really very meaningful.
I am the source of your salvation. Hand me the custodian.
This is a lot of the problem that I have with religion as well, and with any singular ideology. When I describe myself as something, I'm just describing the general area in which I've found myself, not a creed to which I'm attached. So people who go for these kind of off-the-peg moral systems that don't require any thought, that don't require any reason, that's just like a cheat code for the brain. You know, it's a hack. It's a quick thing. If I do these things, then I'm a good person. If I rebuke sin, if I only eat fish on a Friday, you know, or if I denounce white people, then I am automatically a good person, rather than thinking about the nuance of the situation. And I can understand why it's tempting, I suppose, because it's easy, but it's not adaptable. It's not related to what's true or accurate. And that's where you get your problems.
Providing conscience for those who have none.
And all these systems seek to impose themselves. They seek to force themselves onto other people through evangelism or through law, not through persuasion, not through convincing you that they're right. Many of them won't even enter into that conversation. You can look at how religion has been whittled down by being forced to enter into that conversation, and as a result ending up being debunked. You just need to look into the past to see how science has overtaken religious beliefs and forced them, in the case of many people, to be overcome through the power of persuasion. But religion has resisted that for a long time. Blasphemy laws, you know, locking up and even killing people who dissented and blasphemed against what they believed. And you can look at the modern social justice warrior types to distinguish them from people who actually campaign for social justice. In the same way, they want to shut down any dissent. They don't want to listen to alternative arguments. They're just not willing to even consider, even for a moment, that they might be wrong, or that someone might have another idea that's couched also in evidence, and that these ideas should compete, and whichever one has the best evidence, whichever one proves to be true, should be the one to win out. So, like Trevor, they want to force their ideology into your belly button and make you do what they say, one way or the other.
Hi, my name is Bambara. I'm a 36-year-old Virgo and a former killer, whose hobbies include performing recreational autopsies, defecating and drinking rum. I've recently been given a conscience and would very much like to help you.
Okay.
All governing, even self-governing, must come from a position of consent to yourself. When you start forcing people, when they're doing things because they're being told to or made to, rather than convinced and persuaded, at least within reason, then you're on shaky ground, because things that you impose that have no solid foundation, when that foundation crumbles away, whether it be God or pseudoscience or whatever else, people are left with no morality, because they've given up the option of developing and maintaining and reasoning through their own for this off-the-peg, one-size-fits-all idea that never does fit all situations, hardly ever fits the facts. The situation that we live in changes, the context changes. Any morality must be adaptable to that. What's okay in one situation is not going to be okay in another. When you're starving in a plane crash on the Andes, eating the other passengers who died in the crash is a perfectly good, sensible, moral action in order to stay alive. When you invite someone over for dinner, eating them isn't.
Take much for me to kill you right now.
So what's stopping you? Kill me right now.
That's what I thought. You feel the hesitation, the doubt. You're asking yourself, is it your conscience or my custodian?
Just because I don't feel like doing something doesn't mean I'm not capable of doing it.
I agree. But then I could also say that those who cannot obey themselves must be commanded.
Too often, I think, we find that people whose conscience, whose moral landscape crumbles and falls away because it's built on those weak foundations, ends up lashing out. Whereas if they'd been reasoned with, if they'd been persuaded, if they had figured out their own degree of conscience, then that inherent adaptability would mean there wouldn't be a catastrophic collapse and they wouldn't lash out. Even worse are the people who latch on to these objective moral systems, these religions, these ideologies, these social science coders, and still act without conscience, convincing themselves that they're a good person because they pay lip service, or because they attach themselves to these creeds as though they were absolute, as if they were written in stone and could not be changed, questioned, examined at all. The people who say that you can't be racist to white people, people who say you can't be sexist to men, the kinds of people that excused inquisitions, book burnings, and all the rest. It's the same mindset. People buying in, absolutely. And there's that term, virtue signalling. You can't see into someone's heart or mind, but they can perform certain acts to show that they are towing the line, to even deflect suspicion. How many times have we found people nestled and burrowed away within feminist groups and social justice activism who've turned out to be the very perverts and abusers, harassers and trolls that they have accused other people of being? Sometimes this is because they're hiding and performing, and sometimes it's because they have used these credos, these beliefs, in order to find safe targets, people that they're allowed to hate, people that they're allowed to treat like shit, and they don't get the backlash for it.
Everyone deserves to suffer because everyone is to blame. You made me cut off my left arm and give it to a little boy. She tried to kill me.
When the penny drops and people realise that this is all bullshit, that these diktats that they've been treating as absolute are bullshit, when they fall away, who are they going to blame? Who are they going to blame when you've convinced them that all of society is judging their actions on this false premise, rather than having them judge their own actions and think through their conscience, think through what they want to do? That's far more dangerous, I think, that breakdown, than allowing people to come to their own decisions and understandings. When we act, are we acting because we think it's the right thing to do, or are we acting because it's the expectation of others or the imposition of others? This isn't to say that there aren't circumstances where that's necessary, where you might harm people and so an intercession is required. But in other cases, not so much, I don't think. In a lot of cases, I don't think so. Unless you can prove harm, you don't really have a case to constrict or restrict someone. And it might be scary to have to think for yourself, to have to engineer and decide your own conscience, to follow your own ideas of what's right or wrong. But it's going to be a damn sight more exciting, a damn sight safer, and a damn sight more accurate and robust to do so. When you try to impose these values, people are going to resist. So you better be sure that your conscience, your actual conscience, is clear before you start trying to impose your values and your perception onto other people. Because we're going to resist. I'm going to resist. And my conscience, at least, is clear. If you like what I do, please like, subscribe. Check me out on Twitter at Grimachu, Facebook, James.Desborough, G+, James Grim Desborough, Minds, Grimachu. My main website is postmortemstudios.wordpress.com.